Senator Cotton on the web.
Yes, I am here. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your appearance today. I want to start, Mr. Smith, with you. Microsoft has said some of its source code was stolen. Does that present future security risks? And if so, what are you doing to mitigate it at Microsoft?
Well, the short story is our security system does not depend on the secrecy of our source code. I mean, we live in a world where probably there's more source code by tech companies published in open source form than there is that's not published. And at Microsoft, our source code is accessible to every Microsoft employee. It's not considered to be a particular secret. And our entire threat and security model is based on the premise that there will be times when people will have access to source code. Do we like the fact that this actor saw it? Absolutely not. But we do not believe that it undermines or threatens our ability to keep our customers or ourselves secure. We will, by the way, as we always do, to answer the rest of your question, Senator, we'll ask ourselves, what do we change? It's not apparent to me that I need to have access to our source code. It's not apparent to me that our Senate lobbyists need to have access to our source code. So we may have fewer people that have access to source code in the future, but it's really not at all the heart or center of what we're focused on here.
Okay. Mr. Ramakrishna, approximately 30% of the victims of the attack were not using SolarWinds software. What do you think that tells us about the nature of the attack and what victims were targeted and how they were targeted?
Senator Cotton, thanks for the question. This is referring to the Wall Street Journal report, I believe. 30% is an approximation. As best as we know, there are many different types of attacks and different types of threat vectors. We are not a security company per se, so we wouldn't have detailed information about those types of threat vectors. But what I can share is the discoveries that we have made with Sunspot can apply to any supply chain out there. And it's quite possible that there are active supply chain attacks ongoing right now, some of which we may know about, some of which are yet to be discovered.
Mr. Mandia or Mr. Kurtz, would you like to respond as well?
George, go ahead.
Well, again, when you look at the supply chain attacks here, it is very difficult, obviously, to identify these things. And when we look at the adversaries' capabilities and we look at what was actually done, as we talked about earlier, it's not an easy problem to solve. And, from my perspective, it's one that we have to come together. We have to continue to share intelligence and information. And we have to realize that there are many other techniques and actors that are out there. And when you look at the overall landscape, 30% weren't from SolarWinds. This isn't a surprise. Over the last year, we stopped 75,000 breaches that are in process, and probably a quarter of them were nation states. So this happens every day from every nation state actor, every e-crime actor, and there are a variety of tools and different techniques and tasking orders that are out there. So it's an ongoing effort, and I wish there was a silver bullet. There isn't, but I think a big part of this is exposing the techniques and just how prevalent these attacks are to the American people, so that we can do something about it and we can come together as a group, both in the technology field as well as in government.
And Senator Cotton, this is Kevin Mandia speaking. To me, the attacker did the SolarWinds implant. They've already moved on to whatever's next. We got to go find it. This attacker, maybe their pencil's down for a few months, but the reality is they're going to come back. They're going to be an ever-present offense that we have to play defense against, and how they break in will always evolve. And all we can do is close the window and close the security gap better next time.
Okay, and then one final question. I think I'll direct this towards Mr. Mandia and Mr. Kurtz again. To what extent do we think this was designed towards what we might call collection in the intelligence world, simply trying to collect information to learn more about America's intentions, plans, capabilities, or what you might call covert action in the intelligence world, say sabotage of public utilities or military applications or so forth, or could it be both?
Yeah, George, I'll jump first, just, because we got to see what they did firsthand when they broke into us. The reality is this, they were very focused. They had specific individuals that they targeted. They had keyword searches that they did when they broke in so this was not a group that operated like a tank through a cornfield. They had a plan, they had collection requirements, and to some extent, I would say they were disciplined and focused on those collection requirements. Not a fishing
add what-
expedition to just grab whatever they could grab.
And just to add what Kevin says, I think it's important to realize as technology companies, we all leverage big data. The adversary does as well. And while they're collecting this information, they're also storing it, they're indexing it, and they have the ability to go back to it. So if a new order comes in, a new specific order to target a company, target a government organization, they can look for that access. They can look at what's already been collected. They could leverage that. The second piece of this is, in the early days, it was network exploration. Then it turned into data exfiltration. And then it turned into data destruction and impact, right? So certainly when you have this level of access, you can collect data. If you start impacting systems, it's a pretty good way to get caught. So could it be turned into that? Absolutely. But in general, what we've seen is collection, and that simply goes into the big machine, the big apparatus to be used again for further missions.
Senator Bennett.